Get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
So I was the guy when Jimmy Mack suggested that we go later, like 8:30 or 9 o'clock. I said, no. We're doing it at 8 o'clock. Yeah, and traffic, emergencies at the day job. I mean, I walked into the house with about 5 minutes to spare. So that's where we're at. But I am so happy to be with you here this week. We got Rebel Force Radio Live, which is when we really turn over the whole agenda to you, the listener. And you get to tell us not only what you want us to talk about, steer the conversation, but you get to sound off on what you think about it too. So we're always delighted when we can do one of these shows, and we hope to continue doing them. We're also broadcasting live on YouTube and Facebook. If you're listening to this later on delayed podcast, don't try to call. Don't try to call the number. We're going to give out the number here in just a moment. But before I do, I should bring on my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yes, another week, and we're back on YouTube already. So I think we're getting kind of hooked on it. So it seems like everyone in the live chat is down with joining us for some Star Wars talk live tonight. And so we're looking forward to getting as many calls that we can get into the show on the air tonight. We're going to try to get in everyone. Luke says, Happy Cheeseburger Day. That's
What?
true. Today is Cheeseburger Day. There was
It's always a day. It's always some sort of day, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
Everybody
you
gets a day. Everything gets a day.
Yeah, I saw something online. It said Happy Cheeseburger Day, and at the bottom it said sponsored by McDonald's.
Oh.
Wonder how that all came into play. It wasn't. I thought it was part of the old Roman Empire or something. It was decided, according to the sundial, which day was actually Cheeseburger Day. But apparently, it's just a marketing ploy for McDonald's.
Oh, yeah, right. Big surprise. Well, that's like Sweetest Day, which actually has its evolution in my neck of the woods in Northeast Ohio. It was a candy maker, a chocolatier. But I always thought it was just kind of a made up holiday, just to sell more candy, more flowers.
There was a Star Wars cheeseburger, actually, from Burger King when Revenge of the Sith came out. I think it was Revenge of the Sith. Remember, it had a black bun? It was like a Vader burger. Does anyone remember that?
I don't remember the Vader burger.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think it was Burger King. I don't know. But
was it one of those where you could choose the light side or the dark side?
It might have been.
Are you medium or are you well done?
I'd be really impressed if someone still had one of those burgers in their collection. It's not easy to hold on to.
Food collectors have a rough time. They got a rough go of it. Because it all just turns to goo at some point, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Somebody made customized Rebel Force Radio chocolates, and I tried saving those, and it was like this 4x4 sized sheet, and it said Rebel Force Radio in the middle of it. And I discovered it was in crumbs once when I went to look in on it. I was like, how did this happen? And I had 2 of them. The first one had a big bite taken out of it. Well, wait a second. How did this happen? I pointed fingers too, but nobody admitted to it.
Weren't you eating Star Wars bugles at one point during what was that? Was that during Force Awakens?
Yeah, it wasn't
some sort of chip. Because I remember you munching
really
on
powdery. Yeah, really powdery. Don't eat on the air. Don't eat on the air. So, but what you should do is call us and get on the air. We're taking your calls right now. The RFR hotline is open, 708-866-1RFR. That's 708-866-1737. And this is a call-in show, so we want you to call in.
Yeah, please do. In fact, let's get started right now. Who's our first caller? This is Phoenix. From Phoenix. It always says Pennsylvania for this one, but we'll see who it is. I don't know if you're from Phoenix or if you're from Pennsylvania. Who is this? Yo.
Eric from Phoenix.
Oh, Eric from Phoenix. Why does it say that you are from Harrisburg, PA? This happens every time with you.
Back in the day when you had to change cell phone numbers, when you changed cell phones, I happen to be living in Pennsylvania when I got the cell phone I have now, so that's why.
Okay, well, that kind of makes sense. So you've moved out to Arizona, but you used to be in PA, and so the area code and everything, it's still a PA number.
That's correct.
All right. Well, cool. Well, you're one of our favorites. What's on your mind this week? There's lots to talk about. There are a bunch of new theories and rumors about Episode 9 have started to emerge. People are going crazy. Time travel, world between worlds, it's all being discussed as possible plot points for the rise of Skywalker. What do you say?
Well, got to be fully honest with you guys. I'm T-minus 3 months, so I'm pretty much the only spoilers that I'm going to look for from here on out is anything that you guys talk about. So I pretty much have stayed away from, online trying to find a whole lot. Like if they release trailers or you guys talk about something, I'll pay attention to it. But outside of just some thoughts I had from the last trailer, I'm trying to stay away from it just so I go in and don't know the whole thing. Versus like the prequels where I felt like I knew pretty much everything that was going to happen before it happened. So I called in just because I was going to ask you some questions on the Mandalorian.
Go for it.
Because I wanted to, and so I'm going to take this a total different route. And first of all, I got to say I love the pregame, listening to you guys before the show starts about voice levels in folders, and Jason's voice is too low, and I got to toggle this, and I got to toggle that. I said that was awesome. The little behind the scenes, before the episode started.
What Eric's talking about is if you're on hold, and because we open the switchboard a minute or two before we start the live broadcast. If you're on hold, we've got it set up so you can hear the show. Well, if you're hearing the show before the show starts, you're going to hear all kinds of stuff. So we learned that the hard way once.
Oh yes,
it was all good. It was all good.
All right, cool, man. All right, let's talk Mandalorian.
Yeah, so I'm going to take this a different route. So you guys have done a great job. You went through the whole trailer. You did a lot of speculation, and one of the things that stuck in my head, you guys talked about fan service. And I loved it, and I thought it was great conversation. So here's my question to you guys. What are one or two things that you would love to see show up in The Mandalorian? I don't want to say Easter eggs. You call it fan service. What are one or two things that you guys would like to see show up in the first season of Mandalorian?
See, that's kind of hard to say because it's really uncharted territory we're going into. We don't even know what the vibe of the show is really going to be and what the story is going to be like. But obviously, we're going to be seeing the remnants of the Empire, which is cool. I would like to see the Force in existence in some way in this show. And, I know there's not necessarily Force users that are going to be spotlighted in this show. I still want to see the Force come into play somehow. I don't know how. I mean, that's the hard thing when it comes to something like The Mandalorian. I could actually talk more about the Rise of Skywalker and things that I'd really want to see in that. But like right now, I mean, to me, just seeing R2-D2 on screen would be fan service. I mean, where's R2? Where is R2-D2? Where's R2? I never thought I'd go from the Where's Kitster campaign to the Where's R2. But here we are.
There's need for that now.
Yeah. If there's anything I want to see in The Rise of Skywalker is R2 in doing something to save the day. Because that's R2-D2's MO. That's what he's always done. He's always been in a place where he saves the day somehow. At least in the original trilogy and in the prequels, for crying out loud. I mean, Padme would have never even left the planet Naboo if it wasn't for R2-D2 and his intervention. So I want to see him being returned to his heroic status. But I think at this point we're just gonna be lucky to see him on screen. And not under a tarp this time.
Yeah, I'll take it on the Mandalorian side. I think that there were a number of fans out there when they heard that sort of one of the subplots of the Mandalorian was going to be the rise of the First Order. There were a lot of fans out there that they didn't want to hear that. They wanted it to be much closer to the events of Return of the Jedi and dealing with the aftermath of really not the rise of the First Order, the rise of the New Republic. I'm actually okay with this. I think that we are in need for some connection, some bridge between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, much like the Clone Wars kind of did that, and Rebels did that between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. I'm really looking forward to hearing name dropping, about, whispers or rumors about this Snoke character, or maybe hearing about, maybe General Hux, has a father or has a family member or something that's a former Imperial that we might meet. I like that stuff, and I understand the argument that if everybody's related and everybody knew each other, that becomes very small. But you can't tell me that the center of the Star Wars universe isn't the saga films, 1 through 9. So I think that what I'm looking forward to is the experience that I had with Clone Wars and Rebels, where it gives me a great story, a great adventure, but then gives me something new to listen for and look for when I go back to those amazing films that I've loved my entire life. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
What about you? What do you want to see, Eric from Phoenix?
Well, there's a lot I want to see, but I would say for me, I liked where you went with that, Jason, and I think you're right. I think that's fine to see that, but where I went was two things, and these may be unpopular, but hey, these are just my thoughts. Number one, Boba Fett. And I don't necessarily want Boba Fett a predominant character in it, but do we find out, does it get mentioned? Is there some legend of him getting out of the Sarlacc? Does that somehow come into play?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a classic story from the expanded universe. He first showed up in the Dark Empire comic book, and they just were like, oh my God, Boba Fett, what are you doing here? And his line was, the Sarlacc found me somewhat indigestible.
Yeah, right.
So then all of a sudden he was back.
None of that's canon. But none of that's canon anymore. So
that could
are they going to reintroduce the fact that he gets out, or do they not even talking about it?
I don't think they're talking about it.
I think it'd be cool if he got brought up. But
they've already exposed pictures of Trandoshans that aren't Bosk, pictures of bounty hunters wearing T-shaped visors that are not Boba Fett, and assassin droids that are not IG-88. So I just expect to see somebody showing up with bandages around his head, and they say, who the hell are you? And he'll say, well, I'm not Dengar.
I don't know who I am, but I'll tell you who I'm not. Yeah.
And then, Forlom and Zuckus, they can show up and just have their names flip-flop like for a tribute to the old Kenner action figures. But when we're being introduced to all these similar tropes that we know of from the bounty hunters, and they're not those characters. So I think having Boba Fett show up in the Mandalorian is a long shot right now, going into it.
But I think that he is unavoidable as a talking point in the movie or in the series, because I think that it's established that Boba Fett had quite a reputation, Jango Fett had quite a reputation, and the underworld, the underworld can be a pretty small community once you've reached a certain status, a certain level. So here you've got this guy 6, 7, 8 years after Boba Fett disappeared from the scene, and he's wearing the garb. There's got to be comparisons. There's got to be maybe people mistaking him, even if they don't mention him by name. Bounty hunter, you look very familiar to me. I think that it's crazy to think that he's just one of a million as far as bounty hunters wearing Mandalorian armor. I don't think it was all that. I don't think we were ever to assume that was commonplace. So some sort of connection or reference, I think, is bound to happen. Sorry, I was getting a phone call.
And
they have no
that's
respect.
Kind of work. That's where my head went. And then the second thing I had, and this once again may be totally out in left field, but with Solo, I liked how they brought in just some of the weird stuff kind of from Marvel Comics. I don't know that there was a ton we saw in the movie that was directly taken from Marvel Comics, but some of those creatures, they were out there and reminded me of the whole Marvel Comics scene. And one of the things I remember as a kid, and I can't remember if it's Marvel or the Sunday newspaper strips that they did, and there's a character in the extended trailer that you saw at Celebration that had the guns on his shoulders. And I remember the weekly newspaper strip. I don't know if it was Han Solo and like his girlfriend, and they had these spacesuits with the guns. And then, of course, you have a character like Jackson, which I know is out there. They had the little bunny character in Solo. But some of that stuff, whether or not that's exactly it, but nods to things from Marvel or from the expanded universe, even if it's not the exact same people, but there's some tie in there, similarities or things that take you back to that. I think that would be pretty cool. Kind of like what, they did a ton of that with Clone Wars, where they pulled in stuff from the prequels, or in Rebels, they pulled stuff back from the Clone Wars, just how they tie things together. So I don't want it to be a small world, but pulling in some of that cool stuff from when we were kids that was kind of out there, but having it fit for that time period, I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, Filoni has, I think it wasn't Filoni, it was Favreau. He mentioned that there's going to be Easter eggs galore in The Mandalorian. So we've already seen a few. I mean, the Kowakian monkey lizard on a spit. That's good stuff right there. Keep that stuff coming. Why not? I don't recall, and you mentioned this, Eric, a bunny rabbit in Solo. Did I miss something? Was there?
Yeah, there's rabbit? Like a little. I can't remember. Yeah, when the first time they're playing, like a little mouse. Maybe it's like a little more of a mouse, but there's a little white creature behind Han Solo that kind of comes into the scene. And I can't remember if it's the first time he plays Sabak or the second time.
Right.
And once again, that's not Jackson, but I kind of thought of Jackson when I saw that character, because it was not your typical creatures from the Star Wars universe that we were used to from a screen perspective.
Hard to believe they didn't make a single action figure of any of those weird aliens and monsters from those card game sequences in Solo. It's so weird that they didn't take advantage of those great designs. But, this is the new age of Star Wars collecting, I guess, where you collect nothing. So at least that's how I feel as a 3 3/4 inch.
It's going to be. I've got some points on that, but Eric, hey man, thanks so much for calling. Appreciate it. You're always welcome here on Rebel Force Radio Live.
We had an RFR hangout last night at the Galloping Ghost Arcade on Ogden Avenue in Brookfield, Illinois. And that's something we've been doing lately with a little more frequency. And so we're starting to develop a crew of regulars, which is really great. And so it starts off with a couple hours of old school video arcade action leading into some late night drinking. And we talk Star Wars nonstop. And a lot of people were bemoaning the fact that the 3 3/4 inch line is starting to blow out of steam a little bit. So I don't know what we can do to support this stuff and keep it alive. But I thought things were going to start going in the different direction when they produced the big Jabba sail barge and everything. I thought, wow, this is going to be a new commitment to 3 3/4 inch. And now I'll be damned, all I'm seeing coming out for the Rise of Skywalker is 6-inch Black Series and the Mandalorian. There's nothing that we know of coming for 3 3/4 inch for the Mandalorian. So I'm bummed about that. Does anyone in the chat come up with some suggestions? What should we do? Should we start a petition?
Look, I think that I actually think that Hasbro is doing they're doing the right thing in dedicating the 3 3/4 inch scale to the vintage collection. I think that's absolutely the right way to go. I think that the toy industry has evolved. It has moved. That scale is not a scale that kids like. It's just not. I would say in general, action figures are not at the top of kids' list, but they want big, chunky, cartoony action figures. That seems to be what's. You're shaking your head, but you're
because who cares what kids want? Sell to the collector.
That's what they're doing with the vintage collection and the retro packaging. They're doing exactly that. You yourself posted Poe's X-Wing up on our social media channels, and it's in a vintage style box with the Rise of Skywalker done in a traditional Star Wars OT style title treatment. That's exactly what they're doing. The mainstream line is going to be
an afterthought. It's just a little bit here. That's a shut up Jimmy Mac move is what that is, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work on me. And Brent is on the chat, and he says support the vintage collection and demand it. And I'm down with Brent.
And demand it. How do we demand this? How do we demand this?
We gotta take it to the streets.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna go on a limb and I'm gonna tell you that Hasbro is too big of a company to have the license for Star Wars. Star Wars is becoming more of a niche collector-based community, and I don't think that we look at the stuff that the smaller indie companies are able to do. And they're not having the same problems because everybody's just going on their website and buying their stuff. I mean, Hasbro couldn't even get everybody that 6-inch scale Boba Fett done in the original Kenner colors. I mean, it was like selling out in 18 seconds on Hasbro Pulse. People were spending $100 a year to be a member of Hasbro Pulse, and they couldn't even get guaranteed one of those figures. I mean, what are you paying the money for? What, for 2 days shipping on stuff that sells out before you even have a chance to buy it? I don't think that Hasbro is equipped to be the kind of responsive collector-based company that some of the smaller, more indie toy manufacturers and sellers are. But let's see what our old buddy Rich Brendel has to say. Rich is on the line. Hey, Rich. What's going on, man?
Hey, guys. How's it going tonight?
Good. You're from Fond du Lac. Which supper club are you calling us from? Yeah, hey there.
Oh, we're calling. Yeah, hey there. Calling from the Brendel Supper Club tonight.
Oh, yeah. Enjoying a Brandy Alexander
right now.
There you go. Perfect.
Brandy old-fashioned sour. That's the drink here.
Rich, Jimmy and I are having a little bit of a disagreement about the direction of collecting here as it pertains to Star Wars, Hasbro, etc. Jim thinks that if they just put the product out there, people will buy it.
Yes.
I'm not so sure about that anymore. I used to think along those lines. I don't know. I'm watching my own kids, their play patterns. It is really hard to compete.
Children. I'm not talking about children.
But that's what Hasbro, that's what that company is built to do, is to produce toys at a massive volume for kids. That's what I think they're built to do. Mattel has tried to, and to some degree of success, have been able to kind of turn a little bit more towards the collector market. But I have yet to see Hasbro really pull this off. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Marvel. I mean, they're having a grand old time with the Marvel Legends line. But as we approach this new era of Marvel, will it have the same impact as, how are you going to compete with Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Tony Stark? Now they've lost Spider-Man. That original crew that we got to know over the last 10 years, most of them are not going to be in the equation. So we'll see what happens with the toys. Anyway, Brent, it's very sad. Hashtag very sad. What did you call to talk about, Brent? Rich Brent. Sorry.
Yeah.
Rich.
So
that's
first
Rich.
of all, my take on the vintage collection there and Hasbro, I think that Fortnite's kind of killing all the other franchises, because it's like all the kids like Fortnite now instead of what's actually cool out there.
Rich, that franchise is, I think, already the biggest when you count all the revenue from all the different revenue streams. For that, it is, I think, the biggest franchise of all time already. Fortnite. How do you compete with that? That's a really good question. If I'm in a boardroom at Disney or Lucasfilm, I'm definitely looking at things like Fortnite as my competition, not Marvel.
Fortnite.
Yeah.
I'm looking up Fortnite right now. I'm not even sure what Fortnite is.
What we're going through right now.
Jimmy don't know.
Serious.
You don't know Fortnite.
I'm looking it up. I don't know any of this stuff. Oh, that's kind of cool.
All right.
It's like one of those video games where the kids like to see people go flossing on and stuff. That's what it is. It's like, it's dumb.
Well, isn't it a game where you jump on and you try to murder your friends? I mean, isn't that what it really is?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. That's what kids like to do, I guess, nowadays.
I got to tell you real quick. My son and my daughter, they got into Roblox, which is like it's a step down from Minecraft, and then which is a step down from Fortnite. And I got really concerned because my son was doing these pageants, these beauty pageants that his sister was doing, and I want to be supportive, and I'm like, okay, son, you're in these beauty pageants, and he's like, yeah, but my name is Professor Poop Bro. So I thought, okay. I'm like, I think I'm okay. Professor Poop Bro. All right, anyway.
Rich, bring it back to Star Wars.
Yeah, please do.
God.
Save us.
What do you got to talk about here? Anything Star Wars?
Yeah, so Rise of Skywalker. I'm so excited about that. I know we all freaked out when we found out Palpatine was coming back. That just got the wheels in the brain turning like crazy. So one thing Palpatine says in Return of the Jedi, I'm hoping has a whole new significance to it. And that's everything is going as I have foreseen. And if he planned this whole thing about him coming back, even back then, that would be like amazing. So that's one thing that I was. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think that's going to have a little bit more significance, him saying that after we watch this movie?
Well, yeah, he's the ultimate puppet master, right? So he's always pulling the strings and working both ends against the middle. But we thought he was dead.
Yeah.
So that needs to be explained. And there are these leaks and rumors that show up online all the time. And I saw one today. And I don't commit any of these to reality until I actually see the movie. So I'm not completely sold on some of these ideas, but they talk about Palpatine just simply saying, "I survived." without any sort of explanation or anything like that. And
you're saying these rumors are saying that that's about all that we get.
Yeah,
is just for explanation. I survived.
It's all good. It's all good. I just,
this trilogy is not good. This trilogy is certainly not good at explaining things. This is the trilogy of just accept it all at face value. All right, don't ask any questions.
Yeah. But you have to have it come back to Palpatine, but you have to explain what he's been up to, where he's been, how he survived, and how does Snoke fit in all of this. That's a pretty complicated scenario right there in itself. So hopefully we'll get that explanation to a degree. I think you almost have to. If you're going to be bringing back Palpatine and removing essentially the same threat that Palpatine serves by taking Snoke out, you have to explain both of them. And you can't just say Sith always survive long falls down shafts, Neil C. in the chat. Because, okay, we bought that with Darth Maul. We're not going to, we have to have some, with Maul, they didn't explain that either. He got thrown out with the garbage or something and survived, but...
Well, let me throw this at you guys, because this is one of the rumors that's taken the internet by storm this week, and they're looking at the big duel between Rey and Kylo, and this is featured, of course, famously on the poster that we were given at D23. And Daisy Ridley says that it's going to be amazing, and the fact that it is like the centerpiece of the poster has a lot of people. If you look at the original teaser poster for Return of the Jedi, when it was Revenge of the Jedi, it was showing the battle between Vader and Luke. So this suggests that maybe this is something of real importance. And so there's a rumor that, and this is coming out of that Reddit rumor mill, is that Rey and Kylo, during their duel, will be transporting around the galaxy in a force flash.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, they're just going to be kind of almost like something you would see in Star Trek or Harry Potter. They're going to be able to sort of appear, disappear, reappear all throughout Star Wars canon. Now, we also know that there was I don't know how far, I can't remember how far they got to shooting this thing, but they were recreating the Bespin duel between Vader and Luke for The Force Awakens, for Rey's Force back. So you take this idea of the Force back and these visions, then they start throwing in the world between worlds, but there's a lot of people. I knew this was going to trigger Jimmy Mack. Jim is triggered.
Animation stuff thrown shoved into the Rise of Skywalker. You're not going to see the world between worlds. We're going to see what we've already saw with Rey's Force back in the first one, in the Force Awakens. We already saw this happen. It's just going to be a more intense, extended event, I think.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even explained. That's something else we need explained in this film.
What?
Is the Force back? How did Maz get the lightsaber? How does Maz even...
Okay, I'll give you
contact with this.
I'll give you that we need clarification on the travels of the lightsaber. But as far as the Force back, I've battled this back and forth in my head, and I think about Luke training on Bespin, and he's describing the vision that he's having to Yoda. So. And then Yoda even goes in and, Luke asks him, will they die? And Yoda attempts to at least put his mind at ease to tell him what it is. And, always in motion is the future, difficult to see. But you can see that Yoda's making an effort to look into the future to see what might happen. But he's saying they're in pain. I've got to go to them. So I don't know. I guess I looked at that Force back as sort of that type of Jedi sensitivity. The ability to kind of, be almost omnipresent in some ways, or at least be able to kind of go and, where you have a connection, be able to go and experience what your loved ones are experiencing. I don't know. Just the same way that Ben was able to feel the destruction of Alderaan. We don't know what he was actually seeing. Maybe he was having internally a moment like Rey has in that force back.
That was more of a feeling I think Ben was experiencing, because he sort of grabbed his chest a little.
He was doing the Fred Sanford.
Yeah, he was, Elizabeth, I'm coming to join you on Alderaan. But no, but that's how I always thought it was more of a feeling than a vision. He was feeling the pain, the immense pain ripple through the force.
But Luke was clearly describing a vision.
Yeah,
Luke was describing a vision.
So he could have been actually going through a similar thing in his head that Rey was going through when she picked up the lightsaber for the first time. But we're just hearing about it. We're not actually seeing it. That's what makes the Rey thing so different, is just the way it's presented. But it seems like it's a concept that has existed in Star Wars for a long time. Even if you look back at Ben and his reaction all around being, blown up, it's kind of it's just a different way of presenting someone's connection to the Force, a character's connection to the Force. Sometimes they talk about it. Sometimes they seem physically affected by it, and other times we get to see what's in their heads, at least in the case of both Rey and Luke in the dark cave on Dagobah. So,
Rich, what do you think about the possibility of this world between worlds concept that was introduced in the Clone Wars and then really kind of...
No, it was introduced in Rebels when they ran out of ideas, when they needed to wrap up that series really quick. We're wrapping it up at the end of next season. Oh, geez, what can we come up with? It was in a nice little bow.
Right. I guess they were planting the seed. They were planting the seed, I think, earlier on with Mortis and all of that stuff. I think I look at World Between Worlds and Mortis as sort of like two parts of the same concept, the same idea. But you're right. I mean, it was crystallized and canonized in the episode World Between Worlds, where Ezra was in this sort of purgatory place, and this is what allowed him to save Ahsoka. And they're saying that because Palpatine was there, canonically Palpatine was there, he was aware of the World Between Worlds, and this idea of portals. So why not use that as an excuse? Look, if Rian Johnson can walk across his office and pull out the Jedi training book or whatever that thing was called, and come up with the idea or use that as justification for the idea of the ability to what do they call that? Force project.
Yes.
Then why couldn't a J.J. Abrams look at something that happened in Rebels, especially with Dave Filoni's star rising even higher and getting into the live action realm? I don't think it's as crazy. I'm not saying it's a good idea, Jim. I kind of have the same visceral reaction as you do, but I do think that it's more and more possible. Rich, do you think that the world between worlds could rise up in Rise of Skywalker?
I think it's very possible. I'm with you. It's even through that, it seemed a little bit too Back to the Future or something like that. It was like a totally different franchise watching those episodes. But I was thinking there is one area that could really benefit with like a World Between Worlds kind of theme within it, and that's Galaxy's Edge. Because then if we did that, we could, if they had like a World Between Worlds there, we could actually go to Hoth then. We could go to Mos Eisley.
That is brilliant. That is a brilliant idea. So this is sort of like the Star Wars equivalent of the holodeck. So you go in there and you're like, I want to be on Hoth. I'm going in the World Between Worlds to show up in Jabba's palace or in the Mos Eisley Cantina. Yeah. That is fantastic. I vote you, Rich Brendel. I vote you next president of Disney Corp. Based on that idea alone.
You put little tunnels
I'll send you
underneath
my
the
resume
park.
and you can send it to them.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for calling in. Appreciate it. We want to get to some more calls. Let's see who's been hanging on. Let's see who's been hanging the longest. Oh, who's this? Nathan from Rochester. Hey, Nathan, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. What's going on tonight?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, how are you,
Nathan?
Good. I'm glad you guys are talking about that. The whole Luke Forceback thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess I think the prompter asked me what my question was, and I've been kind of thinking about this for a while. Everybody kind of gives a bad name for Luke in The Last Jedi, and the problems with The Last Jedi were, I think, more so pacing for me.
Okay.
But I really did enjoy kind of how they portrayed Luke. It was it was a different kind of a version of him than everybody kind of expected him to be.
Okay.
But when you kind of peel it back, I think he was more of it was kind of just in line with what his character was in Return of the Jedi.
All right. I'd love to hear more. To explain how we might view glimpses of The Last Jedi Luke in Return of the Jedi. If we want to look for these clues, what are these things these connections that you're finding?
Right. So, I mean, obviously he's a very somber character in Return of the Jedi. You know, he goes from the farm boy, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to, Empire Strikes Back, which is kind of the trainer, in training guy. And then he kind of becomes that real somber dude in Return of the Jedi. And, when I look back at kind of the whole setup, I mean, he's there for a reason, right? He's on Octu, or that's Octu, right? I can't remember his name. They never told him in the movies. Yeah. So, but I mean, he's going through, obviously this is what he thinks is best for the galaxy. I go back to when you look at kind of the whole prequel kind of saga, they were more so looking at the erosion of an institution. The Jedi, the Jedi Order was this institution, right? And it kind of eroded from the inside. If you guys have ever seen The Wire, they kind of explore all that, right?
Okay.
You guys ever seen The Wire?
I haven't. I've heard great things about it.
Great freaking show, right? They kind of talk about the erosion of an institution inside, right? And Luke, I think, once he goes through, the first clue is Yoda, right? He says, "Pass on what you've learned." So he passes. So he tries to do that. Right? He doesn't have any training really. He only has a week or 2 weeks of training with Yoda on Dagobah, and then he goes and fights Vader, and then goes back, at the end, and a year later to Dagobah. So he tries to go do it. He screws up. Everybody dies, right? Mm-hmm. And he's completely just baffled by this whole scenario. So, I think what's interesting is he thinks the only thing that he can do is go and try to destroy it, because obviously he failed. He had that fleeting thought to kill. You guys were talking about this a few weeks ago, I think, on the show.
Right.
Was how ridiculous it was that Luke would actually try to kill his nephew, right? The same thing happens to him when he is having that vision on Dagobah, which you guys were just talking about. He has that vision, and he thinks to himself, well, I can save everything. And Yoda says, difficult to see, always in motion is the future, right? He has the same thing that happens to him when he's about to strike down his nephew. And it's really interesting to me, the way that his character kind of goes to that kind of thought process. The dark side is still always tempting him. And I thought it was amazing, the way that they kind of did that.
Okay.
Because it's kind of this, yeah.
I'm willing to concede, I think you're making some really good points. I'm willing to concede that it's easy to think of Luke Skywalker as, the optimist that you saw in A New Hope and even The Empire Strikes Back. But you're right in that, you think back to the scene with Luke and Leia on Endor when he's about to leave. Luke is a fatalist. He's going off to his death. He's refusing. He's going to redeem his father or die. Those are the choices that he has. He's not going off there to kill his father. That's not an upper. That's kind of a guy that's that is a downer. And he is somber. You're right. And so, I think that you're on to something in the sense that you could make a case that, Luke is not happy-go-lucky. However, at the end of Return of the Jedi, when he's looking on to the faces of the three individuals that had the biggest impact on him, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and his father, you get a sense that is, and he's all smiles. And you are right. I mean, Hamill does play it kind of somber from the time Yoda dies to the end of the film, he's pretty somber, but he does perk up at the end of that, and you get the happily ever after ending. But I think the part of the turn that they give Luke that falls apart for me in The Last Jedi is when he refuses. It's not that he's refusing to train Rey. It's that he's refusing to do anything. It's the complete total inaction. He's just going to exist. He's just waiting to die. That's the part of Luke in the sequel trilogy that I find so unforgivable.
All right. But I think it goes back to the institution thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because you think that his whole thing is if this is going to continue to go on over and over and over again, and it's going to, and if it doesn't, it's got to stop with him, and it needs to be kind of reset. You think about all these institutions that kind of collapse into each other. If they have to reset it, you have to reset it to really get back to the core of what the values of what the Jedi were. That's why he went to the island to learn, because obviously he failed again, and that's the whole
right.
Theme of
But why did why did he go to the most holy place to renounce his religion? I've used the analogy. It's like I'm going to go to the site. I'm a Christian. I'm going to go to the site of the crucifixion, or what my faith believes is the resurrection, just to renounce and cut myself off. That's an issue that I have. But I really appreciate the thoughts that you're bringing. I really do. Luke is not a sunny optimist.
Everybody talks about how bad that. Right, I think that gets lost in translation. That obviously everybody wanted to see him come in and save the day. Right, we wanted that last shot of all of them in the Falcon. Right, everybody wanted that, and that's obviously a big epic fail on their part. But
well, I mean, the fail that we didn't get to see the three of them together one last time. Yeah.
It should have happened in Force Awakens. It should have happened there.
Yeah,
and they didn't get it. I mean, they had all three of them. They didn't get it, and but whatever. It is what it is now. So
Jason suggested I do something to help me get through that angst that I share with you about the big three not being reunited in the sequel. And so what we did was we took our back to the 3 3/4 inch action figures. We took our new Han, our new Leia, and our new Luke, and we put them together on the shelf right in the center there with 3PO, R2, and Chewie. And we had our own damn reunion, and it was great. But here's something, and I want to throw this at you guys because it's something that's really been bugging me about Luke in The Last Jedi. And maybe I'm just reading between the lines, or maybe my analysis is just way off. But hasn't there been some books, visual guides, the novelization, what have you, that may have been suggesting that Luke had gone to Ahch-To because he was going to off himself there. And when Rey approached him, he was wearing those ceremonial Jedi robes because he was going to do it in that moment, but then he hesitated when she suddenly appeared.
He shows up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember something about that. Where was that established, or where was that thrown out? Because I do remember what you're talking about.
The visual guide. It was in the visual guide, and then it was also in the novelization, because he's having these forced dreams in the beginning of the book, I think.
Yes.
And
that's right.
He shows up right then to kind of put him on a new direction. And that's, you're talking about going back to the Holy Land, quote, Holy Land, of Ahch-To. And he's there, and he apparently he had, in those books, he had gone back, or the visual guide, he had gone back several times. It was something he had done multiple times, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. even though he felt in his heart that he knew he had to do it. And yet the Force is essentially telling him to not do it, to give Rey the chance, to pass it all on to her. Going back to the failure aspect of that, the whole movie is about failure. When you look at all those characters, every single one of those characters fails in that movie, and they learn a lesson from it.
Yeah.
And even Yoda says to them, you know, I told you to pass on what you had learned, but you didn't pass on the failure lesson too. And everybody's got to go through that, right?
Mm.
The lesson of failure is one of the most important lessons to move on with your own life.
Yeah, but it doesn't make for really epic storytelling in my book, and it kind of deconstructs the characters and turns them into dickheads. And I mean, that's a big problem I have with that.
I agree. The character development in that movie is not very good, because none of them really. It's kind of like the whole time Poe's a jackass, right?
Mm.
He's just like he's pissing off everybody because he's a hothead, or at least they try to make him a hothead or whatever. So.
He doesn't have you're right, and I can hear people out there saying, well, but Han Solo, you know, he was smarmy and he was arrogant and he was all this, but he showed these glimpses of if he hadn't shown glimpses of him being something more than just, you know, a walking stereotype. I don't think he would have been as popular of a character. I think it was those glimpses of there being something deeper in him. And that's the stuff that Harrison Ford, the actor, brought. None of the dialogue really shows it to any great degree. But Harrison Ford just has that thing. Nathan, you have given us a lot to think about, dude. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And
no, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah. No, our pleasure. Thank you. All right, let's see. Who else is... we've got another Phoenix, Jonah. How about Jonah? Are you in the whale?
Yes, hello?
Yeah.
Yes, hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are you hearing Swank's bad jokes?
Oh, come on. It's not every day you talk to a Jonah.
That's funny.
Yeah, you probably haven't heard that very often. All right.
I think I've heard it about every day. But
every day.
Anyways, you guys can hear me though?
Yeah, can hear you just fine. Yes.
All right, I am calling from Phoenix. No affiliations with Eric from Phoenix.
You don't know him at all?
Expectations, though.
You don't know him?
I don't know Eric from Phoenix, but he's legendary on here, though. So.
He's a regular.
But, second...
He represents Phoenix well, in your opinion, right?
He does. Yeah, second-time caller. My last call was about Rebels a couple years ago, but I'm excited. I was at work today, and I saw that email from Patreon yesterday, and I was like, I'm gonna call today. So, anyways,
glad you did.
It's just crazy. We're in this, for real. We're in this golden age of speculation. I feel like everything's on the table. And one thing I've really been hoping to see in 9 is kind of similar to what we saw with Ezra and Rebels when he was in like that old kind of Jedi temple thing, and he talked to Yoda for like 5 minutes about whatever that was.
Right.
Now Yoda was technically alive, but whatever. Anyways, though, I do want to see Rey kind of tap into the Force kind of thing, and then it's like something like Ezra, to where it's like some deep Force kind of thing, and then then it's like boom, the Force Hall of Fame comes up, and you got Ewan as Obi-Wan, you got Hayden, come back, and they have a little 5-minute chit-chat. You throw in Yoda, you throw in Luke, and you have like a Force Netherworld kind of conversation for a couple minutes. I think that would be a good curtain call to kind of for the last movie and everything like that. But what do you guys think? Is something like that possible?
Oh yeah, of course it's possible. But it's something I think that we've talked about a lot, especially leading into the sequel trilogy, is will there be a spiritual Jedi Council that will form? How cool would that be if we find Luke and he's connected with that spiritual Jedi Council, and it's Obi-Wan, Yoda, Qui-Gon, and they're all continuing the training of Luke, but obviously things went in a completely different direction. Now, there are hints we can look at in the teaser trailer where Luke says, we've taught you all that we've known. We've passed along all that we know, and now it's on you. And so when he says we, I'm hoping that it's Yoda and possibly Obi-Wan, or maybe a Qui-Gon. I don't know. Or Anakin. Of course, Anakin would be a member of that Jedi Council, too. So
yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. And the thing is, with the sequel trilogy, I mean, it's all just kind of been so random sometimes, and you just never know what JJ is going to want to do. But it's like, and there's so many things where it's like, okay, if they just did this, I'd be happy, for a lot of people. But this is an example where it's like, just make it work. It's 5 minutes of, quote unquote fan service, but people would really like it and make it feel cohesive through 9 movies. I mean, this kind of stuff's not going to be on the table starting in 2022. You know what I mean? So it's like, just
go for
something that makes a lot of sense. It's about the Force and the Jedi, and clearly Ben and Yoda, Obi-Wan was popping up as a Force ghost in 4 and 5, or not 4 and 5. Well, kind of, whatever, 5, 6, whatever. So it's like it was pretty accessible to do in the OT. And it's been crickets on that front as far as netherworld conversations, except for, for Yoda. And then I guess, did Ewan have a line in TFA? What's that line to Rey? Where it's like, these are your first steps or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. But hopefully something, Yeah.
And Alec Guinness even was included in that. And we have a breakdown of how they made that all happen on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. But it's been hinted at clearly that Rey is connecting to these characters in the netherworld. So let's blow everyone's mind and have her knocked out cold there, face down somewhere, and she hears, Rey, Rey, Ben?
I know. I mean, it would be awesome. It would really be awesome. I'm sorry, Jason.
Blow minds.
We've been keeping you out of this. We've just been steamrolling through here.
No, gosh, no. Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
It's
you know
okay.
what?
Sometimes it's refreshing to do that.
No, it's nice when I get to listen to a little Rebel Force Radio myself, It's good times. All right, man. Hey, thank you so much for calling. Really appreciate it. There's good people in Phoenix. Including Eric and Jonah. Let's see, who else do we have? Annapolis, Maryland. Evan, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey.
Good, man.
Hey, I've been listening to you guys for a long time. This is the first time I've had a chance to call in. So I have this theory of how it was cool that you guys were talking earlier about how are they going to explain Palpatine being back and how are they going to explain Snoke. And I had this theory back a while ago that if we go back to Return of the Jedi, when Vader brings Luke before the Emperor and the Emperor does his infamous, God, leave us. And then the royal guards go off. And then we know everything that ensues. Vader throws Palpatine down that shaft. I have this theory that Snoke is actually one of the Emperor's royal guards. And hear me out on this. So I feel like what happened is that once the guards left and the Emperor went down the shaft, one of the guards went down to retrieve the Emperor. I feel like that guard was Snoke. And I feel like part of Snoke's disfigurement is because as we see Palpatine being thrown down the shaft, he's still harnessing Force lightning. So that could explain that part of the concept. And then for almost as a reward for rescuing him, Palpatine, because now he does not have the rule of 2. He does not have an apprentice. So he takes Snoke on and he makes Snoke do his biddings while he is being the puppet master, as Jimmy was talking about earlier. And I kind of feel like that can kind of tie the whole thing together. He's sitting there, he's meant to kind of, coddle Kylo and get this whole, he's taking information this entire time from the Emperor because it's not time for the Emperor to return fully yet.
Wow, I like that. That's the best Snoke theory.
Guys?
That's the best Snoke theory I've heard because it really ties it all together. And if he's not one of the royal guards, maybe he's one of those weird old guys that Palpatine was running around with because we saw a couple of members of his crew, the Imperial dignitaries.
That's right.
Those were his pals.
Well, Jimmy, one of those guys was, I can't remember his name, but one of those guys was Vader's butler, remember?
Oh yeah, I don't think that was the same character. I don't think so.
It looked a lot like him though. He had similar garb on. Yeah, I remember thinking that when I first saw Rogue One.
Yeah, there was one that had a name. His name was Pestige or Sate Pestige or something like that. And he actually was this grand visor to the Emperor and stuff. And so that was him. And then he got whatever that role was supposed to be got completely written out. But it ended up on a Kenner toy. If you look at the vintage Star Destroyer playset, it mentions him, I believe, on the box. I don't know. I have to go up to the Star Wars room and check it out.
Right. Yeah.
Or it was in the instructions or in the box or something.
One thing you guys hit on last week, I always listen to you guys on my lunch break, and which is great because thanks for helping my workday be a little bit better.
Man. Yeah.
You guys were talking about speculating on the scene that we see in the teaser for when Rey's throwing the saber and she's like in training, and I can't remember if it was Jimmy that was saying that you had heard, we're going to freak out when we finally find out who somebody had told you we're going to all freak out when we find out who's training her.
Right.
And I remember that Jason, you had said something about Yoda threw his lightsaber in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry, Revenge of the Sith.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But also keep in mind, we did see Vader throw his lightsaber at Luke in
Empire,
Return of the Jedi. So that could be Anakin.
And didn't he throw his saber at Luke in Empire Strikes Back too? No, maybe
it's definitely in Jedi, and that's what brings down the staircase, and that's when Luke falls down the stairs. Yep. I have the rumor that I have heard. Now I'll throw this out. This may be a spoiler. I guess they're rumors until they're proven true, and then they become spoilers. But what I have heard is that whole throwing of the lightsaber is to set up redemption for Luke for throwing the lightsaber. Rey throws the lightsaber. Luke catches it and says to Rey, "A Jedi never throws his lightsaber."
Right.
And that is going to be the big.
Everybody goes nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And then everyone's going to go, "Yep, all right, I'm in on this one. All right, I'm in for the ride."
That's no way to treat a lightsaber.
So it's
right.
Not to throw out Marvel. So it's going to be like Captain America catching the hammer. Then I guess.
There you go. Similar thing. Hey man, thank you so much. Thanks, Evan from Annapolis. No, he's gone. He's gone. He's gone.
Okay.
We got a lot of people on here.
No, that's
a lot of people.
Let's keep the line moving then.
Yeah. How about I think this is Megan. Megan from New Jersey. Hello?
You know what? Actually, it's Pete, and I'm using my wife's phone, so that's why I came up Megan.
Oh, hold on a second. We got a cameo. Are you going to bed? Hold on. I'm sorry, guys. Here.
It's nighttime.
Yeah,
Jason's got to say goodnight to young Bailey.
Oh, okay. I love you.
Oh, this is a cute scene here happening on YouTube Live.
Say hi. Say, look in the camera.
Say hi there.
The camera's right there. Right there. Say hi.
Hi there. It's Uncle Jimmy.
Uncle Jimmy. All right, baby. Good night. Love you. All right. Get out of here. All right. Sorry about that.
She's going to start unboxing
something.
Yeah, she should. All right. Megan's husband. What's your name?
My name's Peter.
Peter, that's right. Pete. All right, Pete. Sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, I want to take things in a different direction. Everybody's calling up, talking some plot points and things and theories and things that they want to see. I kind of wanted to maybe look behind the scenes and see what you guys thought as to whether or not Lucasfilm and kind of is taking a pause here after this. Do you feel like they're going to get things right after Episode 9? Are we already starting to see them starting to put their ducks in a row with The Mandalorian and maybe even 9 being kind of more in line with what the fans and everybody wants? Or do you think the whole thing's been mismanaged from the very beginning and nothing's really going to change?
Well, there's the theory out there that all of these so-called leaks that we're hearing about the plot are really this guerrilla market research going on, where these leaks get put out there to see what the fan reaction is like, and then that will dictate the course of how the film is being edited. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure book or something. But apparently there's a lot of different scenarios in play right now as they're in the editing suite, and they're piecing together all of the content they have to try to make a cohesive final film here. And I think some of that could be happening. I put a little bit of faith in that theory, that some of this stuff is being floated out there to see how the fans are going to react and see what they could possibly do to make a film that will appease and fulfill as many Star Wars fans as possible. That could very well be true. As far as what goes on after The Rise of Skywalker, I think it's fully focused on creating these streaming series for the Disney Plus platform as they really lock down and consider what direction the film franchise is going to be taking over the course of the next few years. We also have heard all the rumors everyone else hears about there being a leadership change as far as Star Wars is concerned, happening sometime maybe in spring of 2020, where you could see
Jimmy,
someone...
Tell us more. This is the first time I'm hearing this.
Well, it's, again, you can just chalk it up to being rumors, but I mean, some people think it's possible Kevin Feige could be shifting over to a role in Star Wars. Lucasfilm has some other projects that are underway that might not require the attention of somebody like that, but for Star Wars itself, it's possible there could be a figurehead put in place there to sort of keep everything together. A lot of people have always said, Dave Filoni, naturally. But is that something Dave Filoni wants to do? Has anyone asked him that? I bet they have. Mm-hmm. And it's possible he wants to just continue as a storyteller and not someone who's a manager. But there's talk out there that somebody could be shifting over and taking control of Star Wars in springtime.
I would say that for me, I think the line in the sand and what Favreau, Filoni represent is letting people that really understand and know Star Wars, they've got it in their DNA, run the show. And, Rian Johnson can be as big a fan as he wants, but I think just listening to his director's commentary on and the behind the scenes stuff, I don't think that he really understands Star Wars at all, quite frankly. I think he's more of an auteur. I think that he's a great kind of indie, quirky filmmaker, and he's certainly a smart guy, but I don't think he understands Star Wars. I don't even really know, honestly, if J.J. Abrams does to the extent that Dave Filoni and a guy like Jon Favreau do, quite honestly. So I think what it represents is, when you talk about, are we looking at a shift, I think it's really letting the people that understand Star Wars run the show, as opposed to just saying, well, this person's a talented filmmaker, why not let them do it? I mean, they made a great this, why can't they make a great Star Wars? Well, I think that the difference is that in the past, you had George Lucas working with guys like Irvin Kershner and Richard Marquand. I don't know that they would have made great Star Wars if it wouldn't have been for George's being there. So that's what I think. This idea that you can just hire really talented people and give them a franchise like Star Wars, like it's some sort of weird some cinematic relay race, didn't work. Didn't work, and that's really Kathleen Kennedy's biggest fail, was not insisting that there be a cohesive, coherent story mapped out from episode 7 through episode 9. I love that people like to claim that they go, well, George Lucas didn't have that. The hell he didn't. George Lucas really wrote too big of a screenplay to be put in one movie, so he did the middle portion. He did the middle portion first. I'm not saying he had it all scripted out. He's been quite transparent about what he had and what he didn't have. But as far as the major beats from 4 through 6, hell yes, he had it planned out.
Well, that's the thing about Feige. You mentioned him, Jimmy, possibly taking over. When we went to go see Endgame, we may not have known exactly what the story was going to be, but after you got done watching it, you realized that maybe even from the very beginning, they had put those beats in place to be paid off at the end there. Whereas I feel like with everybody that's been calling in and in the chat room and, Patreon over the last few months, we have no idea what to expect here. We sort of do because of the leaks and whatnot and the trailer, but none of us really know. And it's really interesting. I'm going to bail because I know a lot of people are on hold, but I just want to say thank you for doing this. You guys mean a lot to us. And,
thanks, Pete.
Have a great night.
Oh, dude, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Jim, I know that's a common rebuttal that people have all the time is they say, well, George didn't have it. He didn't know that Luke and Leia were going to be brother and sister. And, that is true. But I also don't think that George really felt that was a massive plot point. That was sort of a convenient little bow that he tied at the end. This was always about father, son, that conflict. Everything else was sort of ancillary, I believe, to George and the story that he was really wanting to tell. But my God, I mean, we all know that he had this massive story treatment planned. He couldn't fit it all into one movie, and he chopped it up. There's lots of evidence of significant chunks of the backstory that we found in the prequels that existed in those legal pads of George in that famous 3-ring notebook. So I don't buy this whole, even George didn't know how it was going to go. He had a hell of a lot more figured out from, episodes. George Lucas had more figured out about 1 through 6 than Disney ever had figured out about 7 through 9.
No. And I think the proof is in the fact that with Palpatine returning in episode 9, you think there would have been hints along the way as to his potential return, some sort of foreshadowing, something. But everything's just been a shot in the dark so far. And that's obvious. I mean, the people are on record all over the place confirming that that's fact. So,
yeah.
And George Lucas is a guy who created the whole thing and built all of these worlds and created a universe. So whatever he had committed to paper or to a script is irrelevant because he was always thinking about it. So the story was going on in his head for years and years and years.
That's a really good point. There was continuity. The continuity was just in George's head. Yeah, that's a great point.
Sitting by himself at the San Rafael diner he goes to every weekend, munching on his omelet and hash browns and thinking about lightsabers and Dianogas.
Now wait a minute. Now Ryan. Okay, all right. I gotta. We haven't really paid much attention to the chat, but I'm gonna throw out. Ryan Fields is calling BS on me. Straight BS. He says no way GL planned all 6 movies more than Disney planned 3 eps. You are just crapping on Disney, dude. I love you. I'm glad you're here. I don't do your history. Those yellow legal pads had all kinds of backstory about these characters. There's no way you can convince me that George didn't have more established about those 6 movies back in 1976 than Disney had in these 3. You just gotta.
Well, he started out to create one movie.
Right,
and that was
exactly.
a struggle in itself.
Yes.
And then when that movie became a thing, then he really sat down and considered where everything could go based on not only that one movie, but for the backstories that he had created in his head and on the legal paper about those characters and the situations. And that stuff all kind of had a real solid foundation. Now, of course, things shifted and changed with the realities of filmmaking, with the realities of budget, with the realities of space and time, and the fact that George went from wanting to have a series of films that went on pretty much indefinitely to just wrapping it up after the third movie. And so, yeah, obviously concessions had to be made, but I see Sheldon is yelling about a bunch of stuff in the chat. Yeah, I'm calling you out, Sheldon. I don't know.
Hey, by the way, by the way, for anybody that thinks that we aren't tolerant here at Rebel Force Radio, the fact that we're friends with Sheldon just shows you just.
Stop that.
Just shows it. No. But here's the thing. It's a big. We have a big tent at Rebel Force Radio, and I love the fact that we get calls from people that defend The Last Jedi. And in the last caller that was talking about, mopey, somber Luke has given me a lot to think about. I'll tell you what he's done. He's giving me another reason to go back and watch The Last Jedi. I can tell you that. So I love the diversity of opinion, and you know what? In my opinion, that's one thing that's just missing from the world stage in general is diversity of opinion. So let's go to is this Downton Abbey?
Also, after this call,
yeah.
Remember last week you did give a shout out to an RFR listener named Dan, who was hanging out in Salt Lake City with Hayden Christensen and Ian McDermott when they were visiting the hospital out there. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
Well, I heard from Dan, and I do have his phone number, so we might want to get him up because he
is he on hold?
He's not.
Well, why don't you have Dan call us? And as soon as I see him
to do that.
You know what? Do you have the ability to do that?
Well, I can send him an email.
Okay, send him an email and tell him to call and put in the screener that it's, that it's Dan. Nobody else do that, by the way.
Yeah, we'll see.
Nobody tell the screener that you're Dan, or I'm going to be ticked. What did somebody say? What is it? That's old nonsense, Jason. Oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know what you mean there, Jared. Are you calling me nonsense, or are you calling me tolerant? I don't know. But while we're waiting for Dan to call, let's go ahead and take. Is this Chandler? It's a cool name.
Yeah.
Hey, is this Chandler?
I'm calling from Denton, Texas. Yes.
All right.
It is.
Is this Chandler Bong?
No, unfortunately not.
It's a friend's joke. It's a friend's joke. Yeah, of course you do. Of course,
his name Bing. His name was Bing.
Yes, but there was an episode where they revealed that his TV guide comes to a Miss Chandler Bong. So
okay,
all right. Anyway, all right. Sorry, Chandler. Go ahead.
Calling about the Kenobi series, which I think all Star Wars fans are be.
We're losing you, Chandler.
We are.
Must be storms in Texas.
Yeah. Try to get it out fast.
There he goes again.
Chandler, I'm sorry, man. Can you try to give us a call back? We'll put you on as soon as we see that you're here. Jim, you were talking about the Hayden rumor. Well, I believe we've got Katie on the line. Katie, you want to talk about Hayden Christensen?
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
I was just at FanX in Salt Lake City too, and I got to see Hayden and Ian, and it was just so awesome. And it just got me thinking about the new movies and how I feel like Disney's really tried to distance themselves from the prequel, and that's been part of their goal with the new movies. And I feel like at this point, they just need to let that go. I think that's a mistake. And I just want to know, what are the odds that Hayden will be an episode 9?
I think that the odds are very good. I would be shocked if he's not. I think we're going to see I personally believe that the rise of Skywalker, the resurrection of Skywalker, is not about Luke. I think it's about Anakin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally believe it, because the only way that you cannot diminish the sacrifice of Vader / Anakin is to have the job be done for once and for all by Anakin. If it has to be done by Kylo, I think they're opening themselves up to, well, what the heck was Vader's sacrifice for?
Right.
So I think that it's about Anakin getting a proper go at Palpatine.
Yeah, that would be good to see. What do you think, Katie?
Will Disney really just embrace the prequels like that? Because I feel like their whole thing has been to distance themselves.
JJ has said that.
And I feel like
there's going to be tie-ins to both the original trilogy and the prequels. And we've seen Disney do an about-face with the Clone Wars. They're bringing the Clone Wars back. And that was one of the first things they lowered the axe on when they took control of Star Wars, was they canceled the Clone Wars because the suits at Disney were not fans of the prequels. And that's fact.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm really excited then.
No, I think you have a lot of reason to be excited. Now, Katie, were you actually waiting for the panel to begin with Ian and Hayden when the word came down that they weren't going to be taking the stage?
No, I wasn't, but I did. I was waiting where they were going to have the photo shoots of the both of them, and I waited, and I got to see them while they were walking in and waved to them and say hi to them. And I was just elated about that I totally spaced the panel. But when I got home, I read about it was canceled, and that just got me really excited about the rumors.
Yeah, no, I think that's the smoking gun right there, the fact that they canceled that panel. They know how easy it is for these actors, especially when they're excited, to kind of slip up. And fans are also really good. Just ask Dave Filoni at asking questions, with these little Trojan horses in the questions, and so it's hard for them. So I don't blame Disney for doing it. I think it's kind of unfair to do it at the last minute when you got a whole room full of people waiting to see these two guys take the stage. But so did you say you actually got your photo taken with Hayden?
No, I didn't. I wanted to so bad, but I didn't want to drop. I think it was like $200. So what I did instead is I just waited outside like the tent where they had to walk from a door for the celebrities to the tent. I just waited there for like an hour until they walked in, and I saw them, and it was awesome. I got to say hi, so that was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've heard really great things about him. Katie, thanks so much for calling in. Please don't be a stranger. Keep us on the speed dial here. I believe we have Dan on the line. This is Dan from Salt Lake City. So, Dan, you were actually there at the hospital when Ian McDiarmid and Hayden Christensen made their appearance and got to spend time with some of the families there.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, guys? I feel bad. I feel like I kind of cut the line there, but I know a lot of people are waiting to call.
Well, a lot of people are also waiting to listen to and hear your recount of this really great moment that happened.
Oh boy, pressure's on. Okay,
yes.
Well, here I go. I have to spin a yarn here. Then I really have to make this interesting. No, I'm an anchor and reporter. I do the morning newscast and the midday newscast here in Salt Lake City, and I was in Phoenix forever before that. But anyway, so I convinced the bosses to let me not be on the midday newscast because we got word from the founder of FanX that the Emperor and Anakin, Ian and Hayden, were going to be in town. And they said, hey, listen, they're going to be at Primary Children's Hospital, and they'll be in the Ronald McDonald Room meeting with a lot of, seriously ill children and their families. And if you're familiar with the Ronald McDonald House or the Ronald McDonald Rooms at different hospitals, these are sometimes long-term facilities with full living quarters and kitchens and all that. And so it's always very, impactful to be there and do these kind of stories. And so I went there. I was probably the only, I would say, on-air guy there, because they could have just sent a photographer, which one of the other stations did, and I know you guys posted that video. So I was there kind of like, well, here I am, because I'm this big Star Wars fan, but I didn't want it to be about that, and I wanted to kind of just let the whole thing happen. And so we waited, and there were probably about a couple dozen people in this relatively small room, and and they came on in, and it was just for some of them, you wondered were they going to have to explain who they were, because again, they don't necessarily look like the disfigured Emperor, or he doesn't look like Anakin. But boy, when they came in, it was something else, because I think I was telling you guys this in the voicemail last week, that when you interview certain celebrities and famous folks, you can kind of tell they've got their shtick and they've got their act, and they say the right things in the right circumstances. But these guys just got right to it with the families, and they connected immediately and got down on the level with a lot of these children. And some of them were older, wheelchair-bound children with disabilities, or, it could have been 20-somethings, but they had some of them had, photos to sign and drawings to sign. And Hayden especially, he just, it's almost as if you expected maybe they would say something about Star Wars, or, hey, did you see me do this or that with a lightsaber? But it was nothing about that. It was just, they were there to talk about them, to talk about their families, to talk about their interests, and they just kept asking. That's what I always say is a good quality for a celebrity is when they ask you a question and they start asking others questions, that's when you can tell that they really care, because otherwise they're just kind of sitting there doing the kind of junket thing and receiving all the questions and canned answers. And these guys were just totally involved in these conversations. One family, it was probably about 10 minutes that they spoke with this family. And so I was there with everybody else with the phone out, and, just kind of enjoying the moment. And I have to admit that there was a guy there who was I'm sure he's part of a local R2 builders group, droid builders, because he had this fantastic R2-D2, which was, I want to say it was screen ready, but I'm sure they never had an R2-D2 like that on set, because it was fully functional, periscope, everything, the arms coming out. It was great, all the sounds. And so he grabbed Hayden as Hayden was walking out, because they had to, Hayden and Ian had to get to this red carpet thing for the Fan X. And so as they were going out, I kind of looked over at the podcaster coworker of mine who was also there, and he kind of motions over. And I felt bad doing it, but afterward I was glad I did, that I kind of intercepted Hayden at the pass and just very quickly introduced myself. He said hello. He's just a gentleman. Snapped a picture real quick, and that was about it.
Yeah.
And that was my kind of interaction with them.
And were they? You say that the conversation was really less about Star Wars and more about these kids. It was Ian and Hayden that wanted to know what was going on with them in their lives and their families' lives. And yeah, that's pretty.
Well, that's what was
pretty
so
awesome.
cool about it, is because you kind of want to kind of gauge how they are with real people. And I mean, Hayden just had this just kindness, which was, that's what I thought was so funny. And I posted in my pictures, I said, look, who knew that the two greatest villains of all time are the softest of softy, bad guys? And so that was kind of fun to watch. And right afterward, John Rhys Davies came in, and I know he's not Star Wars, but he's Lucasfilm with Indiana Jones. And so he came in. Oh, he was doing the Gimli thing from Lord of the Rings, and he grabbed a lightsaber, and he was just, it was these kind of inflatable lightsabers with the kids, and he was just fantastic. And we talked to him, probably for 15 minutes.
That guy's got great stories. In fact, that might be a good candidate, Jim, to throw on the YouTube. We've got an interview that we did with John Rhys Davies not too long ago, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And that guy he's got amazing stories. Super, super nice guy. And he's Lucasfilm royalty. There's no doubt about that.
Great guy, yeah.
You know what I thought was kind of funny was the founder of FanX, who we had interviewed the day before, who again has started this great convention here. It used to be called Comic-Con, but of course they can't say that. And so anyway, it's this big event. He said that the last time that Ian McDiarmid was here in Salt Lake City, that he had gone to see the Tabernacle Choir perform, because it was just this great experience. It's this cultural thing you come and see here in Salt Lake. And he told me, hey, listen, I don't know if this is true, but he says the Emperor, and Hayden, they are going to be attending the Tabernacle Choir. And I just kept picturing, the opera scene in Revenge of the Sith, as they sit in the loft. And
I would love it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Hayden and Ian are sitting there enjoying the Tabernacle, and all of a sudden Ian just leans over and says, If I haven't told you.
Notes from a Jedi.
Notes from a
And
Jedi.
I heard afterwards that I think at least Ian had gone there, and I think John Rhys Davies went there as well on Sunday to catch the concert. But I just thought that was a perfect
That's awesome.
Juxtaposition of, and maybe they were talking about the fact that they were told not to say anything at the panel and about their upcoming role in Rise of Skywalker. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I really am happy that Hayden Christensen is finally receiving or opening himself up to all the love that Star Wars fans have for him. And I think that, it's hard for people to imagine that Mark Hamill was one time quite distant from fandom, because he just, when he really, I think Mark's the kind of guy, when he goes all in, and he really did embrace it. And I think it's super helpful that he knows what it's like to be a fanboy. He's a fanboy of classic movies and classic TV shows and music. And so he gets us on that level. And so I just think it's great that Hayden is opening himself up, because there's a lot of love for him. And so, Dan, thank you so much for jumping on and sharing the story, that it was exactly what we saw in the videos and the photos, a real sincere moment between these Star Wars legends, and that's exactly what they are, and these kids. I do want to ask, was there any instance where, like, they walked in and you could tell that the kids knew exactly who they were? Were there any kids there that you could tell were big Star Wars fans?
Oh, yeah. Well, and one of them actually said to Hayden Christensen, he says, "Hey, we got the same last name." And he said, "Oh, yeah, it's Christensen. Oh, yeah, you spelled the same." And they were just kind of going on about that. But, yes, there were those who – there was also an artist there who was, prior to the time that they got there, about 20 minutes as we were waiting, he was going around and "Hey, what do you want me to draw?" "Oh, C-3PO." "Okay," and he drew a C-3PO. "What do you want me to draw?" "Darth Vader." And he would draw that up. And so they were ready with their custom drawings, to have the guys sign them, and so they did that. But it was cool. It was cool. I had told, I don't know if you guys read this, I had told Jimmy Mack, because I know Jimmy Mack's the big toy guy, I had told him, and I won't take up too much time with this, but I grew up I've been listening to the show for a while now, so I love the conversations about everything from the toys to the movies and all that. But I grew up in the house of a toy designer. My dad actually, through the 80s, at the very least, through the 80s and into the 90s, he worked for Kenner and Hasbro, both freelance and in-house. We lived in Cincinnati for several years, and we lived in Rhode Island when he worked for Hasbro. And it's funny, so when I told him that I was going to talk to you guys, I went down and I said, "Dad, did you make any Star Wars toys?" Because I was very young when I was when we lived in Cincinnati, and he worked at Kenner, and the first toy I remember having was Jabba's palace, and I had Jabba, and I had a little Gamorrean guard, and those guys. Sadly, I don't have any clue what I did with them. But he said, "Oh yeah, I worked on Ewoks." And I said, "What do you mean you worked on Ewoks?" And he said, "Well, it was kind of post Return of the Jedi Ewoks." And I said, "What, during like Caravan of Courage or something?" So he did. My dad actually did. My dad got some credit with me in the Star Wars world, where he was a plush toy designer. He did more soft toys and girls' toys, and all of his friends were they were across the way on the boys' toys side. And so then I asked him about my job. I said, "Well, where did I get that? Did I just get that from Kenner, like from the break room or something where they had something sitting there?" He goes, "Oh yeah, we never bought them. We just kind of brought stuff home." So who knows? It might have been a prototype or something.
Wow!
Oh my gosh, dude! Valuable thing.
Do you still have it? Do you still have it?
I have not. I don't have any. We moved so much growing up. Again, this kind of volatile career of an artist, a tradesman for these different toy companies that he worked for. And I that's what I asked him. I said, "What did we do with these things?" And sadly, there was that. I know you guys have talked about it before, kind of the dark times where Star Wars kind of, late 80s, early 90s, where, again, I was a fan of Star Wars, but it was so far in the past that it had to get rekindled with the, special edition and all that kind of stuff. And then it built to what it is today for me, but with my fandom. But, another thing, my mom says, and my mom's not a big Star Wars fan or a toy fan, she says, "Hey, remember you had that kind of gun case?" And I said, "No, I have no, what gun case?" "Yeah, it was shaped like one of those Star Wars kind of blaster guns." And so I did the research. Lo and behold, I looked at this thing and went, oh, wait a second. It's called the laser, what is it called? Laser blaster case or something. And it's this 1984 case that you could throw stuff in. And I guess I had that for my toys, but of course I don't have it now. So I'm filled with regret.
Well, that's amazing. What a cool connection you have with your dad, who was working on the Ewoks line back there in the mid '80s.
If you saw the documentary, The Toys That Made Us, where they talk about the Star Wars toys, we were watching it kind of as a family, and every other guy that would pop up, my dad's like, "Oh yeah, there's Dave. Oh yeah, there's so and then they walked through the Kenner. They walked through the Kenner floor of the Kroger building in Cincinnati, and I'm going, "Oh yeah, I remember that when I was a kid. We would go down there into my dad's work and see what he was working on, and it was a cool experience."
Hey, Dan, you make sure that if you have an opportunity, you're a journalist, interview your dad and get it on tape, and make sure that you archive some of that, because I think that part of the history is really, really important, as I don't think we'll ever see anything quite like that Kenner line of Star Wars toys. And for your dad to have been there and watching it and participating in it in some level is pretty awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
I did one of my first interviews I did 15 years ago, so I have to redo it because I would never post that and share it with anybody. Terrible. I've gotten much better since then.
Well, you're great. Hey, please stay in touch with us. You're out there in Utah, and from one recovering broadcaster to another, it's good to meet you, Jimmy Mack knows.
Yeah.
But anyway, hey, thanks for popping on. Appreciate it, especially on such short notice.
Oh, thanks for taking the time, guys. Love RFR. Listen every week. You guys are great. Just keep up the good work, and can't wait for all the Mandalorian and Rise of Skywalker talk coming up.
Oh, yeah. That'll be fun. That'll be a good time.
All right, buddy.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much, Dan.
Let's actually, wait a minute. You know what? We've got people are asking. I saw it a couple times in the chat about Bill Burr. So Bill Burr, comedian, it's been revealed that he is going to be playing a role in The Mandalorian. And Jim, I sent you some a link to a clip of this is a sports radio show. I'm not a sports guy, but is this a sports radio show?
Bill's he's on the interview circuit right now, and you sent me an interview he did with Rich Eisen, and that's sports radio. But I have some clips here from another Bill Burr interview he did with a show called H3 Podcast. And I know nothing about the show, but they do talk to Bill. He discusses a little bit about The Mandalorian. One clip in particular, cut one, he talks a little bit about his experience on the set and what being on the show was like for him.
Now, this was a little ironic because Bill Burr was known to, as a comedian, make fun of Star Wars and Star Wars fans.
We'll get to that.
Okay. All right.
Let's hear clip one first.
Here we go.
It was really really fun scenes. Lot going on, and the other actors that I got to work with. It was pretty. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was pretty.
I'm excited.
It was intense.
Yeah.
It was definitely long days, like a lot of stuff like that. But it was. I think it's gonna be sick.
Yeah. He kind of insinuated at one point in the interview that he might be playing a stormtrooper, but he says he has a hard time even discussing the show because he's a little out of touch with the whole Star Wars scene. Yeah. In this next cut, he tells the guys about how he actually landed the role.
I was at Mike Binder's birthday party, and John was there. He said, "Hey, man," he goes, "I'm doing the next Star Wars." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's great." And he goes, "Would you ever want to do like a part in or something like that?" And I kind of laughed. I was like, "Dude, I always make fun of those Star Wars people trying to annoy them every time one of those movies comes out, just to be a dick." And he goes, "No, I think it'd be funny because I think it'd be funny if the people that listen to your podcast actually saw you on that." And I was just like, "Really?" And my wife was there. She was like, "Yes, say yes, you will."
Yeah.
I go, all right, I'll do it.
So he knows it's a bit of irony. He's in there. But look, if if Simon frickin' Pegg can show up in Star Wars after the things that he said about the prequels, although he has atoned for some of those things, especially in light of what it may have caused actor Ahmed Best all the angst and quite serious issues that he had. He's atoned for those things, but I mean, it's not the first time that we've had somebody who's been a Star Wars denier, a detractor, show up in the films.
We're talking about a streaming series here.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Bill's just going to be in one episode of The Mandalorian. Whether or not he lands a recurring role with it is yet to be seen, but he kept talking about his episode throughout the
Oh, did he? Okay, so he may be relegated to one.
So, I mean, what are people already trying to string him up by his toes because he's done some shtick about Star Wars in the past? I was surprised. I figured that was coming when I heard this little clip of the interview, and he reveals that he kind of jokes on Star Wars fans from time to time. So I pulled up a clip of Bill Burr appearing on Conan from a couple of years ago, and he talks a little bit about how he never got into Star Wars and explains why.
Somehow I missed that movie when it came out. Like, I grew up like isolated in a weird way. We lived on a busy street, so we were cut off from the other kids. And I remember that school year in June, I could talk to somebody my age. And then over the summer, Star Wars came out. And by September, I didn't know what anybody was talking about. They were all talking about the Force and Chewbacca and all of that.
You hadn't seen it?
No, I did. I never saw it. I saw it later. By the time then, I was too old, and I was like, this is like a cheesy self-help book put in outer space with, like, Muppets. Like, I really don't. No, I know. I don't get it. I don't get what... I missed it. You got to be a kid, right? You guys all saw it when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
You didn't see it.
I had perspective. Like, I saw it when I was, like, 27. I was just like, it's all right. Nothing crazy. I just want to drive by that line that they're all standing in.
Yeah.
Like, why does it matter? Why is it this important?
All right.
So
he is right. He is right, though, that I think that the magic happens when you're a kid. There's no question to me that some of the most devoted Star Wars fans that get it on a level that I can connect with are the ones that had their first. I'm not talking about just having the first trilogy or the original trilogy experience. I'm talking about when you had your first Star Wars experience as a kid. It could have been a novel. It could have been a prequel. It could have been a sequel. It could have been an original trilogy film. It doesn't matter. But that first experience as a kid, it's like Santa Claus in a way.
I can't wait. I can't wait till Bill Burr starts getting approached by hardcore Star Wars fans every day for the rest of his life when they walk up to him and they say, "Oh, Bill, was your TK using a Blastech EE3 carbine rifle or was it the EE4?" And the guy's like, "I'm going to EE5 every toe on my foot in your ass if you don't walk away from me." That's probably how Bill Burr will react. But it'll be funny.
I don't know Star Wars from nothing. Bill Burr. Oh, my God. It's crazy. Bunch of idiots. All right. We've got a call here. This is from Michigan. Oh, no. There's always somebody from Michigan. What's going on, Michigan?
What do you have against Michigan? It's
I'm
beautiful.
Ohio. I can't like Michigan.
Hello.
How
you guys doing, Jason and Jimmy? How's everything?
Oh, good. Everything's great, man.
This is Hussein from Michigan.
Hello, Hussein. What's going on, dude?
Didn't we meet at
Not
Star
much,
Wars Celebration? Me and Hussein, we met, didn't we?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe it's probably my clone like Ray.
Yeah, I get that. That's it. So you think that's what we're seeing? Is a clone? Ray is a clone. Who is she a clone of?
It's probably.
All right. We'll put you down for clone. Okay.
So what's going on in Michigan?
What's going on in Michigan? Well, you know how it is. All the seasons are all over the place. One day it's hot, the next day it's Tatooine. So,
Yes, I do. I do know what you're talking about. What can we do for you tonight?
So I heard you guys talking about the toys earlier and how Jimmy was putting the toys together to bring them back, Han and Luke. like when they're older.
Yeah.
I actually do that. I do that on my Instagram. I put all the figures together and I take pictures of them.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think Jason's seen some of them.
Oh,
Link
what's
the
your
Jedi,
Instagram handle? What's your
Link the Jedi.
Oh, dude, you're kidding me. I love your stuff.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, I'm a fan.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm having a fanboy moment.
Thank you so much.
You got to follow this guy, Link the Jedi on Instagram. He is a phenomenal photographer of action figures. And you always have this great way of photographing your Luke figures, especially. You kind of retcon and make up for all the wrongs that Sheldon Norton loves. I'm going to pick on Sheldon tonight. Everyone's giving Sheldon crap online about
I noticed
he's such a Last Jedi fanboy. That
He's
guy.
a bull in a china shop in the chat room right now. It's amazing.
He is,
to watch.
but we love him. He's family. Don't ruffle Sheldon's bald head. All right. So yeah, you do some great stuff on there, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So actually, I was thinking about, because what I do is basically like if a theory pops up or something, when I get the chance, I rush to my figure and I take a picture and I make a scene out of it, like what you've seen.
Yeah.
And there was one particular one that I did even before the whole Disney Plus thing, and now that they're doing all these shows and stuff, now that opens the possibility. And I was thinking of, what if they do one with a young Luke Skywalker with Sebastian Stan and a young Lor Santeca, where they trek throughout the whole galaxy and they get the ancient, like the Jedi relics, and they travel throughout, the whole galaxy. I would love to see that. Like, both probably be titled like the Relics of the Jedi or something like that. Just something to give us some connective tissue.
Yeah.
Because Lor Santeca is such an interesting character. And they barely touched on him. Like when that scene in The Force Awakens happened with Lor Santeca, I was like, I want to know more about this guy.
Well, that was a hallmark of George's way of storytelling, where he would introduce a character, and look at Boba Fett. Just the way that the character was presented, designed, etc. It made you want to know more. And I thought that's one thing that JJ really nailed, was there were a lot of characters that popped up here and there that you said, no, give me more. Now, Lor Santeca, in that particular case, his connection to the Skywalkers and the Solos, by virtue of the dialogue, you're like, no, don't kill him yet. We would need to know who he is.
Right.
I'm with you on that.
Right.
And they spent some serious change on an actor like Max von Sydow to be in there. There's a lot of hype about him. Where's that comic book?
Right. Imagine a Sebastian Stan with a younger version. Obviously, you don't want an older Lor Santeca trekking with Luke, but probably like a Michael Rooker or something.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're really casting this thing. You put a lot of thought into this, Hussein. Yeah. There is. There's talk about. I came across this that there might be a. Jim, you had mentioned, I think, an episode or two ago that. All of a sudden I'm blanking. The actor who played young Han Solo from Solo, Alden Ehrenreich. He had said this to a young fan that they were looking at a way to maybe bring this back, and there's some rumors that a yet to be announced live action series for Disney Plus is maybe not going to necessarily focus around Han and Chewie, but is going to really focus on this Crimson Dawn.
With Maul,
crimes with Maul, and that at one point there was a film back when they were working on these movies, the Star Wars stories, as they were called. There was a film about the cantina. There was going to be a movie that was going to take place on Tatooine, and center around what was going on in the cantina, and that potentially some of these ideas are being recycled and are going to be put into a live-action TV series that will, kind of continue the story about Crimson Dawn and Darth Maul, and not necessarily center around Han and Chewie, but maybe a cameo here. Who knows what it might be? But much like we've speculated that some of the abandoned Boba Fett film is perhaps kind of working into the Mandalorian, we might see something like this. So it's altogether possible. I think we're kidding ourselves if we think that we're not going to see a lot. If these live action series really take off on Disney Plus, which I suspect they will, I think we're absolutely going to see perhaps a series that will take place maybe between Star Wars and Empire. I think that we'll see another actor play Luke Skywalker the same as we saw another actor play Han Solo. Just my thought. I don't think you're off base there, Hussein.
Sebastian Stan,
Yeah, that's the guy that everybody
really
wants.
I want to know what happened to Luke.
Yeah.
That's like that's the main thing for me. I really want to know. 30 years. You're telling me Yoda hasn't seen Luke for 30 years?
Well, no, I don't think that's
After
the
Jedi?
case. I think that once Luke shut himself off from the Force,
Yeah.
then Yoda
I wonder
couldn't
when he
connect
shut
with
off.
him.
Yeah.
That's what I
It's,
think.
it's so many questions. If they had explanations for everything, like every time you'd get to a point where they say something, oh, that's a story for another day. Like, come on.
Maz Kanata. That's another character that needs to be explained. Maz Kanata needs to be explained. How did she get that lightsaber? Lord Santeca.
Right.
How did he end up with the map to Luke Skywalker? What's his connection to this whole thing? We know nothing about Lord Santeca. Nothing. So, there's a lot to wrap
what you
up in
mentioned, though,
episode
about
9.
the map?
The map?
It's funny you mentioned that about the map, like how he got it, because remember when Luke was kind of dumbfounded, like, how did you find me? Like, there was no explanation with that either. There's just so many, like, it's not even plot holes, it's the freaking potholes in the roads. Like,
right. Right, like in Michigan.
Yeah. Hey, Hussein, man, thank you so much. And everybody who is on Instagram, please follow Link the Jedi. He does some great action figure photography. I really love it. Here we got we're coming up. What are we? We close to 2 hours. All right, let's get some. Let's wrap up here. We've got Steven from Baton Rouge. Steven, you're on tonight with Rebel Force Radio. Hello.
Evening, Jason, Jimmy.
Hey, Steven, how are you?
I'm good. Before I get to my question, since it's Cheeseburger Day,
yes.
Does anybody remember Burger Chef and the original 4 posters?
Yeah,
that Burger Chef offered, which were similar to the glasses that were at Burger King.
Right, it was the same art, wasn't it? Now, there wasn't a Burger Chef. They don't exist in the state of Illinois, so I never went to one. But we had Burger King with the glasses. But a lot of people do remember the Burger Chef. What was that, a West Coast franchise?
Burger Chef. We had a Burger Chef here in Ohio. I remember
you did?
Burger Chef. Yeah.
We had one in Baton Rouge. Yeah,
well, they weren't around.
But anyway, my question was pertaining to the Mandalorian. And this kind of came up over at about the last week and a half, which was and kind of brought about another theory, which was Julia Jones on the Star Wars website and on IMDb was listed as top billing for The Mandalorian. And then once everybody kind of got wind of it, it quickly changed. And so there has been kind of this little rumbling of a theory that possibly The Mandalorian would work similar to like Remington Steele, where you have kind of the woman in the background who's kind of running the show, but he's the face of the whole thing. And I was wondering what you guys thought of that theory.
It's possible. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. And why StarWars.com does what they do is beyond my rational thoughts. So, you really got us backed into a corner, my friend. Julia Jones.
Yeah, I can appreciate
Twilight. That. She was in Westworld. But I have no idea where she's going to fall into the Mandalorian. We of course know that.
I loved her in Twilight. She was one of the werewolves. Long-time listeners know that I'm a big fan of the whole Twilight saga. So.
Right. So, but we know Cara Dune is definitely going to be serving a role as a co-conspirator to the protagonist. So, I don't know where Julia Jones would fit into it. Just by looking at her, I would love to see her emerge as some sort of Imperial officer / warlord. I think she would be cool in that role. But God, your guess is as good as mine. We're a couple of months away, and once the show gets rocking and rolling, we're going to get deep into conversation about that. But I find it really hard to even speculate. Yeah.
Go ahead. Do we lose you?
Also, no, I'm here. The reason for the 3¾ inch line of figures to kind of fizzle out the way they have is when we were young, the whole point for the smaller size was that they could build vehicles and play sets for the action figures, and they flooded us with it. So it was a really immersive experience to play. They have, while trying to feed a 3¾ line, there has been just hardly anything as far as play sets or action or vehicles or things to use your figures with. And that's what made it all fun to begin with. I mean, I don't understand why Solo would come out with that cheesy little Millennium Falcon that they did when not just 5-10 years ago they had created that ultimate Millennium Falcon and just retooled it to fit the narrative for what they needed for the new movie.
Yeah.
Because that thing was amazing.
I would love it. As I mentioned earlier, Jim was posting photos of the Poe's new X-Wing for The Rise of Skywalker, and the retail price on that bad boy is $99.
Get out.
Yes. $99 for an X-Wing. And I don't think this is this X-Wing. I mean, it's based on Luke's. It's the same model, same mold as Luke's vintage collection X-Wing that came out, but $99. That's crazy. Thank you so much, Baton Rouge. Appreciate it. We've got Celine Kyle. Isn't that Catwoman? What's going on here from Cedar Rapids? Hey, Catwoman, what's going on tonight?
Hey, it's Celine Jade. I said I wanted to talk about Kylo.
All right, I'm going to have to get on our call screener about that. I think they're pranking us.
You might want to turn down the volume on your laptop or iPad or whatever you're using.
There is a delay, so turn that down. But Celine, welcome. That's all right.
Hey.
That's all right. What's happening?
Celine. Celine was in When the Galaxy Listens.
Excellent.
I know Celine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah. Good friend with Sheldon.
Yeah. Good old Sheldon.
We won't hold it against you.
Yeah, I haven't called in since the Force Awakens trailer show, but I've been listening for like 10 years, so it's been a while.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Celine.
Well, it's good to hear from you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering have you guys heard a lot about that new Snoke comic?
Yeah, we
what
actually
happens
did
in it and everything. Yeah,
we did a video review of it on YouTube that launched over the weekend. So you can check that out, and we get in depth into it. I'm actually looking for the hard copy of the comic here. But what'd you think of it?
I thought it was really interesting, but the part I wanted to touch on was that Snoke's training, because it's not Sith training, because he's not a Sith, but his form of dark side training is actually really similar to Yoda's, to the point where he almost quotes him. Like when Kylo's asking what's in the cave, and instead of saying only what you take with you, it's, only what you're too weak to leave behind. It's almost like the antithesis of Yoda's training. I was wondering how you guys felt about that.
Well, I picked up exactly what you did, Celine. I said that he was the anti-Yoda, that he was inverting everything that Yoda was saying. And, I like that. I think that that's cool that you can kind of create this sort of, as you mentioned, this antithesis of Yoda, and that becomes Snoke. Snoke, for me, I gotta say that he's more of a he's certainly no Palpatine. I don't think he's a Sith. I think that he strikes me very much as a poser, kind of a phony. I'm not going to give him the same relevance as a Darth Maul or as a Count Dooku or as a Palpatine. I think he's kind of all for show. It reminds me kind of what way the old made guys in the mob used to think about John Gotti. John Gotti was the guy that was always out being very flashy and sort of being the caricature of what a Hollywood mob boss was. And I feel like Snoke is sort of, with his gold lame robes and everything, I feel like he's sort of trying a little too hard to be the cool evil Sith Lord. So I just
kind of
think
like Dark Side Lando.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit.
Dark Side Hugh Hefner.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think he's a bit of a poser. I don't think there's a lot of substance there, which probably explains why his apprentice didn't last very long and wiped him out.
My Snoke theory is that he was a former Padawan of Luke's, and they had a showdown with each other when Luke detected the dark side growing in him and detected his influence on his nephew Ben. They had a showdown, and that's why Snoke was all scarred and deformed the way he was when we hooked up with him. And then Snoke went and somehow resurrected the Empire, which is a mystery, and was able to convince Ben Solo to join him and become Kylo Ren. That was my personal Snoke theory. And I think we're going to...
He does seem to have a lot of respect for Luke.
Yes. Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, in the comic that gets brought up where he speaks favorably of Luke when Kylo says Luke is weak, and Snoke reminds him, oh no, Luke's not weak, he's just misguided. And so he recognizes the power in Luke. Obviously, he spends a movie and a half fretting over Luke's return. If Luke Skywalker if he returns, then the Jedi will return, and we have, then it'll be too late for the First Order. I think that was the big fear. And, whether or not Luke's return actually has that kind of impact, it appears just the opposite has really happened. In the year between episodes 8 and 9, we're going to learn that the First Order has grown into absolute power over the galaxy. So Luke's return didn't really do anything to thwart any of that yet. Right? Yeah. We still have another 33% of the story left to go. And I think that's going to shade the way we look at the first two films. So, what do you think? What's your Snoke theory, Celine?
I'm not really sure I have one anymore.
Yeah.
I was like gung-ho on the whole Plagueis thing, and then that went completely out the window, so I think I'm just going to watch and see what happens.
Did it go out the window? I mean, we're in an era of Star Wars where force projection is a thing. Maybe somehow Snoke is a weird force projection of dark side powers coming from Palpatine. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as complicated as that, actually, when we do get the explanation. I think just because Snoke is dead doesn't mean his story is dead also. I think his story still will be told. I think there's going to be revelations about Snoke that we're going to get post-mortem, but I think the Emperor definitely has something to do with it. I just can't quite put my finger on it at all. Our caller from earlier tonight, Evan from Maryland, he laid down the best Snoke theory I've ever heard, where it's one of the royal guards, and he was able to scoop Palpatine out of the shaft and nurse him to health. Crazy. And then maybe he had to suck up some Force lightning along the way, and that's why he looks the way he does.
Ooh, I like it. Someone in the chat thought that what was going on with when Palpatine was thrown into the shaft and in Jedi and all the blue was he was creating a portal for him to escape into.
Right.
And I think that's pretty cool. I gotta say,
it's the portal gave him access to the world between worlds, and he was able to go. He was able to save himself.
We got to get our buddy Chris Marin and Cleveland Chris on to go head to head with Jimmy on World Between Worlds, because as anti World Between Worlds as Jimmy is, Chris is totally pro World Between Worlds, and I'm sort of caught in the middle. I don't know. One thing I do know is I am glad that Celine is in our listening audience. Celine, thank you so much.
Is she still on the line?
Yeah, she's still on the line. Celine Kyle.
Thank you.
Let's wrap up the show by letting Celine have a run through the Yoda questionnaire. Can we do that?
Are we going to do that? Oh, wow.
Can
Celine,
we do
are
that?
you prepared? Are you prepared?
No, but I can do it.
All right. We're going to do it.
Prepare for the Yoda questionnaire.
Yeah, that is true. It's unpreparable.
The answer is Kitster.
Every time. All right, Celine, are you ready for the Yoda questionnaire?
Go for it.
Okay. All right. Celine, what is your favorite, or who or what is your favorite Star Wars character?
All the way, Padme.
All the way,
Padme. All right, Padme. And here's the thing. No justification necessary. We're going to take it all at face value because it's a very individual thing.
And then we'll judge you after you've answered all the questions.
Clearly. Okay. And who or what is your... Look, it's hard to... Padme, for God's sake, she gave birth to Luke and Leia, for crying out loud. Who or what is your least favorite Star Wars character?
Maz.
Maz.
Oh, really?
Yes. I'm beginning to get on the Maz, anti-Maz bandwagon a little bit. Because whenever she appears in the comics, all she does is bust Han Solo. I mean, just bust on him. And I'm getting tired of that. Every time Han Solo's name gets mentioned in the comics, somebody always talks about how skilled he is at running away from things. That's kind of the thing they're laying on Han lately, is that he's a dummy who runs away from things. And I don't like that character assassination he's currently going through. And I look at Maz Kanata as leading the brigade sometimes. So
running.
It's actually a comic book hang up I have with Maz, more than even the movies. Her cameo appearance in The Last Jedi was creepy at best, and
it was a little shoehorned. I got to say, it was a little shoved.
Very much shoehorned in. You can tell she signed a 3-picture deal. Lupita Nyong'o, because I think a lot of people look at that sequence and saying, well, you could have slotted Billy D. Williams in there, put Lando in there. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other characters you could have slid in there, but you go with Maz, and didn't her castle just get destroyed like 2 days ago, and now she's on some mission? It's some mission to it's like a labor dispute that's gone violent.
Labor difficulties of every kind.
You just saw her palace, her castle, her drinking hole, whatever you want to call it, was there for like thousands of years. Yeah. And then, whatever, time for the next thing, I guess. So she's out fighting in some labor dispute.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, Jimmy agrees.
All right.
He's on the anti-Maz bandwagon.
I think I heard a nerve.
Yoda questionnaire. It's not mine, but
okay.
But I had to scratch that itch. So sorry.
All right. And what Star Wars moment? No matter how many times you see it, you play it over and over, it just never ceases to make you smile. Star Wars moment that makes you smile.
It's probably actually when, just the throne room. I think it's just iconic. Episode 4.
In episode what you said, what? The throne room?
Well,
not the throne room exactly. When they're getting the medals, you know.
Yeah. Oh, the award ceremony. Yeah. Oh my gosh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't put, I was thinking throne room as in like episode 6, Emperor's throne room. Okay. Yeah. If that doesn't put a smile on your
it
face.
Helps that Sorry. It helps that I watch it every New Year's, so I'm usually.
Do you blow up the Death Star at midnight?
Every year since like 2011.
Yes.
Right,
yes, the tradition continues.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
What Star Wars moment makes you sad? Is there a moment that brings a little tear to the eye?
Yeah, Padme's death, Padme's funeral.
Padme's
The
funeral.
The Japor snippet. Is there the close-up on that? Does that give it to you?
It's just the whole thing. I think it's mostly because when I first watched that movie, my mom was pregnant and I freaked out.
Wow.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my God.
That would do it.
Yeah,
That would do
I
it.
guess so. Yeah, because they
Should have been a
kind
little
of
warning there.
yeah, they sort of doll up the Padme to make it look like that she died with twins still yet to be born. It's pretty. That's actually pretty. It's intense. That whole thing, you know, when you kind of break some of this down, you know, the thing that keeps getting me is you know, as we talk about Anakin and redemption, you got a lot of people online saying he slaughtered children, and all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, you're right, he did. Master Skywalker, what are we going to do? By the way, did you see that Hayden got reunited with that actor recently at a convention? The little kid who did that. Oh no, what are we going to do?
That was adorable.
I know, and so Hayden got reunited with him. Okay, final question, Celine. If there was another Star Wars movie to be made, and you were cast in it, and George Lucas was the director, what would you like to hear him say to you right after he says "cut" on your last scene? Star Wars movie, you're in it, George Lucas directing. He says, "Cut." What does he say to Celine on set there?
How about a foot massage? No, I wasn't asking. That's what I would like to hear George say. I wasn't trying to answer for you.
Jimmy massaging the feet of
I wasn't
GL.
I wasn't offering anyone either. So let's be clear about that.
What would you like George to say to you, Celine?
I would just like him to say good job.
There you go. Good
Maybe
job.
with a
Well,
little
I
thumbs
say
up.
good job to you, Celine. Thank you so much for joining us here on Rebel Force Radio. Thank you. Please don't be a stranger. Let us know. Keep in touch. You know what? There's one more caller. We got to do this. Let's see. Oh, Patrick. All right, Patrick. We can't not put you on the show. Patrick, last caller. Lots of pressure. Yo. Patrick.
Hey, Jason, Jimmy, how's it going? Patrick from North Carolina.
Hey, man. How are
Hey.
things in North Carolina?
Going good, but I mean, this Atlantic Ocean's scaring us every other day with all these hurricanes, man. It's been
So
insane.
true.
Yeah,
so true.
yeah,
so
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Well, be safe. Be safe.
Please do.
Yeah, we had Hurricane Dorian come by just like a week and a half or so ago, and that was scary enough.
So are you a Star Wars collector? Do you have a collection that you get worried might blow away in a storm and anything like that? Because I would be protecting
Oh,
my
man, I
action
can't even
figures.
begin to
That's
tell
what-
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Board up
during
the
Hurricane
windows.
Florence, I had to box everything up and catalog it, and it was such a headache, man. But
I could imagine.
everything survived. 2 storms here now. We're kind of near a swamp, so flooding's a big worry here. But yeah, everything's good, everything's safe, everything's totally perfectly fine.
Well, good, man. Good. Stay safe. I can't even say safe.
Stay safe.
I guess
Stay
things aren't too
safe.
fine with me. You know, I did bump my head really hard before the show began, so stay safe. Yeah, that's smart. What can we do for you, my friend? The clock's ticking here. We got to get going.
Yeah, sorry if I got a little bit of a mic delay here.
No, it's all right.
I just want to call in. I was listening to you guys talk earlier about Lucasfilm before the Disney purchase and then after the Disney purchase, and how everything's been layered out for so long. I think George Lucas did a really good job setting everything up moving forward to finish up the trilogy with Episode 3. But in a way, we kind of saw that transition near the end of Clone Wars. And now that Disney has had this thing, it's kind of been behind the curtains. We really don't know what's going on over there at Disney. It almost feels like they're keeping a lot from us, and it feels like nothing is really being planned over there. Mm-hmm. But I heard what you guys were saying, and I started thinking about it, like, well, we don't really know the situation over there at Disney.
Well, you're not the only one that doesn't know. I don't know if you saw this, but, with Rian Johnson going out on the circuit promoting what is it? Knives Out? Is that the name of the movie? Knives Out. He's getting bombarded with questions about Star Wars, and some people are saying that. Some people are making the claim that Rian Johnson has been given notice from Disney that he's no longer able to go around talking about. In a sort of a confirmational manner that he is making future Star Wars movies or working on anything in the future. He was at one time he was given the ability to be somewhat ambiguous about it, but that per Disney legal, this is no longer something he's able to do. I think it would be a mistake, despite our good friend Sheldon Norton and even Ryan Fields, who's been listening tonight. I think it would be a mistake to go forward with Rian Johnson. I think he's way too polarizing of a character, of a figure in Star Wars history. I think he kind of, I don't know if it was so much the film itself or just a lot of the comments and the commentary that he had afterwards that I think is sort of disqualified him. But one thing I wanted to throw out there, Jimmy Mack, you have been saying for a while that you believe that Rian Johnson was working with Benioff and Weiss, that the Benioff and Weiss unnamed project was the same as that Rian Johnson was working on. And did you know that you're right about that, according to Kathleen Kennedy?
Yeah. Well,
this goes back to April.
Right, at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. She confirmed that Benioff and Weiss, that they were having sit-downs with Benioff, Weiss, and Rian Johnson.
She confirmed that they were working closely together, that Benioff and Weiss were working closely with Ryan. That was a huge surprise. I do not remember that. I don't even remember talking about that particular quote on this show. But even before then, you were speculating, I believe, that was the same project.
I think that's the best way to move forward. I mean, the thing that really struck me was when Bob Iger announced 2 summers ago that they were going to be pulling back on the output of Star Wars cinematically. And then he later revealed that the next films will be coming in 2020 from Benioff and Weiss. Benioff and Weiss aren't really known as directors. They have very few directing credits on their IMDb. They're known as producers and writers. And I believe that they're forging ahead with whatever the next script and concept is for the future of Star Wars, but they're not going to stick around to direct. In the meantime, there was supposed to be another trilogy that would run concurrent with the Benioff and Weiss series of films. And that was Rian Johnson's. But then Bob Iger made the announcement that he's pulling back. So I think rationally and logically, whatever was in the mix for the 2 different situations, one with Benioff and Weiss and one with Johnson, you put them together and see if those guys can work together and bring a cohesive, fresh start and foundation for future Star Wars storytelling. Whether or not Johnson can go along with that, because every project Rian Johnson works on, he is the writer and director. That's how he does movies. He directs what he writes. All of his movies, Brick, Looper, The Last Jedi, The Brothers Bloom, were all written and directed by Rian Johnson. That's how he operates. So it might be a situation where Johnson has to learn how to work with the Benioff and Weiss material and discover whether or not he wants to do it that way. He might not want to do it that way. And then, of course, as Jason was saying, there's the fact that he's been an extremely polarizing individual on the Star Wars scene since The Last Jedi came out. So all of those things together lead me to believe either he has to take the deal and be the director of the Benioff and Weiss film or just move on and do what he does. That's why he took Knives Out, because after The Last Jedi, what all parties wanted, Lucasfilm and Johnson, was to continue working together. Kathleen Kennedy said making The Last Jedi was the most fulfilling experience she'd had as a filmmaker in her whole career. And they had a mutual appreciation thing going on there. And they wanted to keep the ball going. But what happened? The Last Jedi blew up the fan community. The critical reaction was not what they had hoped for. And then the Solo box office bomb happened. So an entire reset was put into place. That's when Johnson went on to make Knives Out. I don't think Knives Out was what Rian Johnson was planning on doing next. He was going to jump right into the Star Wars trilogy that he was going to direct and produce. But that's been put on the back burner. Whether or not there's still any flame underneath that pot, I don't know. There, I think a final decision has yet to even be made in that department. So everything might be relying on how the Rise of Skywalker does in the box office.
The most recent comments,
any decisions are made.
Yeah, the most recent comments we have from Rian Johnson is an interview that he did with Uprocks earlier just this month. And he said, they're asking him where he was with Star Wars. He says, I'm where I can't say anything about it. Still completely in process with it. It's just, I don't know. It's a process. Means it's a process. So that means it could change, it could shift. There are a bunch of moving parts with it. That doesn't sound like a guy who is saying, oh, yeah, I'm working on it. It's my next film.
Yeah,
in fact, he's even saying that there's another movie that he's going to slot in between that and Star Wars. So
maybe. So he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know. He thinks maybe there's another film, and he's opening up he and his producer, they're opening up their own production company now. And so it seems like Rian is laying down the foundation for a future without Star Wars, in my opinion, as someone who's just a mere observer of everything going on.
Yeah,
that's what
I agree. I think that what's likely to happen is that Kathleen Kennedy is going to move on to greener pastures, and that a new regime is going to come in, whether it be Kevin Feige or really whether it just be Disney in general, kind of, it sounds crazy to say, but sort of taking Star Wars away from Lucasfilm, leave Lucasfilm to work on some other projects, maybe Indiana Jones. There's a Willow series that's being talked about for Netflix, and that the Star Wars franchise is going to be handled by Disney. I think that Rian Johnson is going to be a casualty of that move. But did we answer your question? I feel bad, Patrick. Did we get to what you were talking about?
I want to hear what Patrick thinks.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, there's a big situation here, which is the Rise of Skywalker hasn't even hit theaters yet. So in a good PR move, I think it's good that Lucasfilm has kind of kept it a little bit close to the chest.
Yes.
So that way they let their trilogy finish out, and then maybe starting next year, they can start to hash out everything that happened during the trilogy. They might give it a few years to kind of simmer down a little bit after The Last Jedi and all that divisiveness. And I don't blame them. I mean, from a business standpoint, you don't want things to be really crazy. You definitely want things to be on good terms with the fans. So I hope they come out, whether somebody writes a book or a documentary happens down the line. I do want to know more about this trilogy. For all we know, there's been a plan since day one, and they just literally can't talk to us about it because it's all riled up in NDAs and all that.
Man, you know, your lips to God's ears. I want to hear the story behind the story. That's a book that I cannot wait to read. and it's got so much. I mean, the whole from the meeting with George and Iger, where George looks like he's about to throw up all over that contract, to the interview with George talking about white slavers, through the firing of Miller and Lord and Rogue One. There's so much to be talked about, and I can't wait. Thanks so much, Patrick. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for being so patient. Thank you all for the great calls this week. It's just been phenomenal. We're just having a blast here, and really appreciate all the engagement. And we've been doing this for a long time, so it's great to try something a little bit new. And certainly broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. In the days of TalkShoe and Ustream, we could only dream of having it this easy and this type of reach. So really appreciate it as we wrap things up this week.
Yeah, thank you everyone who called in, especially Dan Spindle, morning news anchor from Salt Lake City, NBC affiliate KSL Channel 5. So everyone out there in the beautiful Salt Lake City area, be sure to tune in and check out Dan in the morning. And look at that guy sitting there telling you the good and the bad news, and just know that he's a Star Wars fan at his core. And thank you everyone. Link the Jedi from Instagram also checking in, along with everyone else. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because in that way you'll get notifications for when we plan on doing these again. And we do plan on doing these again much more frequently, I think, especially once The Mandalorian drops. We look forward to doing some live stuff on YouTube and Facebook and take your calls, and we can have some legitimate after-show conversation each and every week one of those episodes drops. And that'll take us all the way to the holidays and the Rise of Skywalker and RFR Live. We're still figuring out everything as far as episode 9 goes, but we have something big in the works, and we'll be laying that info on you guys real soon. So you'll be able to come out and watch episode 9 with us, and then hang out for a podcast that weekend, and we'll tell you all the wins and wheres on an episode of RFR coming up soon.
Yeah, very soon. Also, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Rebel Force Radio, also on Twitter, RFR Rebel Force. As Jim mentioned, the YouTube channel, which some of you are watching right here, is a great place to keep up with us, and is really become, I think, one of the best as far as kind of repositories of all of the whole gamut of our podcast adventures together. Over a decade's worth of material that Jim is combing through the archives and putting up. But really the best way to experience all things and everything Rebel Force Radio is to join us over on Patreon. You get first crack at the shows as they're released. You also get the Clone Wars roundtables remixed and remastered and made even more relevant than ever today as we count down till the new season, as it were, coming up on Disney Plus. So keep your eyes out for more of that. As Jim said, we want to do this kind of thing as The Mandalorian unveils. We're going to be looking at your reaction, wanting to get your reaction as these episodes are dropped. More news there. And RebelForceRadio.com, that's the place for to keep up with all of this, as well as on Facebook, Rebel Force Radio. So we're going to sign off tonight. So thank you so much, everybody, for being in the live audience, and those of you downloading the show each and every week here on podcast. Appreciate it. Love you all so much. That's going to do it for us for Rebel Force Radio. I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember, what happened?
Ben!
What's going on? That's a never miss.
The Force will be with you always.
That's it.
That's it.
It never fails. We're out of here. See y'all.
Bye.